Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. In this episode, I'm joined by Anthony Hutton. In 2005, Anthony shot to fame as the winner of Big Brother at just 23 years old. But when the spotlight faded, life spiraled into drink, drugs, and even at times suicidal thoughts. But today, as a barber, as a speaker and founder of Never Throwing the Towel Project, he's creating spaces where men can talk, connect and choose life. And he's here today. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me.
So most people, certainly in the UK, will remember you as kind of a young lad who won Big Brother back in 2005. Can you take us back to that moment? You know, what was life like in the immediate aftermath of really becoming very famous overnight?
Yeah, I always say the same question, the same answer. Really, in reflection, it was such a huge, extreme taste of fame. For me, it was on a huge pedestal. I was a huge fan of the show, and you know, I very much built this up in my head that I was actually going to do the program and visualized winning. I remember when later in life I read the book The Secret, and I read it and thought, oh wow, I've actually been doing that for years, as a young man, and I've certainly done it with the Big Brother experience. So it was a very, very surreal moment, an epic moment, almost hard to put into words. To put into context, I entered the house as a young man, early 20s. I lived with my grandparents and my mother in Consett, County Durham. I was in the house for 78 days, cooked up, literally in a house where I only spoke to housemates and a voice that called themselves Big Brother. And it was very much organic in terms of I literally did not speak to any producers. There was no direction of, do this, do this. It was literally what you've seen, apart from obviously it being you got a 24-hour day cooked up into a 1-hour episode. But what you've seen actually is what was going on, is what was happening. Then, sat there, came out as winner to, fireworks and a screaming crowd shouting my name with posters of my face. And then the iconic Davina McCall was waiting downstairs, waiting for me to speak to me. So it was a huge, epic, adrenaline-fueled moment, which I'll never forget.
And so, how did that progress in the kind of short medium term after that period? I mean, you must have been bombarded with attention and offers and people wanting a part of you.
Yeah, so I'd won £50,000 for winning the show. Then the next day, it was wallop straight into kind of the fame and attention, what you've just mentioned. So the very next morning, on the Saturday morning, I think there was 6 or 7 agents that had time slots basically to sign me. The final one that I spoke to, who I was subtly recommended to sign with, was an agency called John Knoll Management, and they had the likes of they had Davina McCall, Russell Brand, Dermot O'Leary, Jade Goody, who'd been very successful from Big Brother. So there's a lot of names that they had. So I signed with them on the Saturday, and at 12:30, round about dinner time, they'd got me an OK photo shoot where I'd got £200,000. So I got whisked off to a mansion, and with a swimming pool, and done this photo shoot, and got an interview. And I remember my schoolmates were still in London because they came down to the Big Brother house for the end night, and they were spending the weekend. And I remember driving back from this mansion, and I rang the lads, and I was like, lads, we're going out tonight. I've just got £200,000. We're going wild, and went to the nightclub, and it was this celebrity hangout nightclub that was on a rooftop. Women, attention, booze. It was I was a young single Geordie lad, loving it, to be honest.
And were you given kind of advice? I mean, you're in 23 at the time of your life, but were you given any advice on how to handle this? How to handle it mentally?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was literally you. To be fair, I came out and maybe had a 10-minute conversation with a psychologist who I'd had a conversation with in the audition process. And he basically that kind of consisted of just all of the newspaper headlines and stories that came out about me. But in terms of anything in terms of preparation or anything like that, there was absolutely nothing like that. And to be fair, I did immediately kind of come casually to that, because I wasn't aware that I would be coming out of a nightclub drunk and there would be basically photographers ready to snap me. That was not on my radar, and that happened. And so it was like, oh right, wow, flipping hell, what the hell's going on here? But in fairness, in terms of like the mental health conversation and stuff like that, people, mental health wasn't a word really back in 2005. That wasn't a thing. People weren't, we weren't having conversations about that. But no, there was, to answer your question, there was no heads up or guidance on how to conduct myself once I come out of the house.
I imagine it's probably a bit like a drug in itself. The time, the time of your life you were having. Did you find that you were just caught up in it and wanting more and more and more?
Well, I dealt with the wallop of fame. I would say I probably dealt with it very well, and also loved it. I was an extrovert character. I was very comfortable with attention. I was wanting female attention. I was all over it, to be perfectly honest. So that kind of side of things, I was all over it, to be perfectly honest with you. And also because I was a very, very young, naive young lad, there was me numbness of just being a young, daft, young carefree man. That also they were good shields as well, because I wasn't delving too much deep into it. I was just I was at a point where I was getting, paid colossal amounts of money. I was getting paid to go to nightclubs, and I was at this point just such a young daft lad where I was like, what? I'm getting paid to go to nightclubs. I'm going there in any case. Like, I'm all over it.
Yeah, I can see how you were probably having a very good time. So when did things start to, ultimately the spotlight maybe started to fade a little bit? What happens then? How did you kind of cope with that?
Yeah, so it was like, I would say it was like a gradual decline. I managed to churn a living out from the Big Brother experience for a good few years. Certain like the first 2 years, I was making a lot of money. But then because I was a young working class man, I wasn't preparing myself for a huge tax bill either. So that was a bit of a like, whoa, what the hell? What? And then so I would say it was a slow decline, but I would say in terms of when it was hitting me, when it hit me was when the money was absolutely like there's no money coming in, and then it was the realization of the thought process of I'm going to have to get a normal job, and that that was that was terrifying to me. That was, the and again, I always say the same answer to this, but this is the answer. It was the ego, it was the pride, and it was the paranoia of what I thought people would think of me, because for a long time, my identity was that's him from Big Brother. That's him who's won Big Brother. So I'd cooked up in my head that I can't get a normal job because I'll get laughed at. And I was so hung up on what people would think of me.
So I know you've talked about struggling with drugs and alcohol, and perhaps having darker thoughts. What was that descent like? When did you realise things were perhaps unravelling a bit?
Well, I think it basically got to a point where I literally wasn't doing anything. So there was absolutely no direction. So I had no job. And the only thing that I actually was doing was going out on the drink, socializing. And at this point, I was basically I'd approached my late 20s now. So I've always had, and still have to this day. So I've always had a really good core of school friends. So we've always like some of me, my best man at my wedding, we went to nursery together since we were 5. But so the close knit friends, they'd obviously moved on with their life in terms of they'd had careers, they had children, they were getting the best friend was having kids and getting married, whereas I was basically in my late 20s with absolute zero direction. So this was the point where I was continuously going out with basically younger acquaintances. And this was when I was getting into basically a circle and a crowd of when it was alcohol and it was also drugs. And it kind of basically came to the point where like that was only my thing. That's all I was doing. At this point, I had a house in Newcastle city centre, and so this was basically a conveyor belt of partying. And in reflection, when I was basically because I'd got to the point where I was feeling so shit. Getting intoxicated was my escape. But then, and like anyone will know who's been down a similar path, the come down, from the alcohol, the come down from the drugs, combined with you are already feeling like shit, and this is when, and I'll answer your question before you ask it. You touched on you sent me the word passive suicidal thoughts, and what I want to be clear is, because I think that there is a huge difference with passive suicidal thoughts and active suicidal thoughts. So I think especially like people close to me and I didn't know I didn't know this was a term at the time. This is I've learned these terminologies through working in the field. So passive suicidal thoughts are massively different to active suicidal thoughts. The passive suicidal thoughts are, so what are they? So they are wishing you weren't here. Like I hate this existence. One of the things that I would always, this was a regular this was a regular thing where I was just like, if someone could just give me a button to press and it was all over, I would say just press it, because at the time I just I just couldn't see a way out, because I'd felt like such a loser. Like I felt like such a loser, and I've always been a very, very driven man. Right from a young lad, I've always been extremely driven. I dedicated all of my life at school. I was the most dedicated young lad you've ever seen in terms of trying to be a footballer. I was extremely sensible, and I was obsessed with trying to be a footballer. Then then the kind of like the driven aspect came to me of like, right, I'm not happy with the job I'm in. I need to change this up. How can I change this up? Right, Big Brother could get me. This could change things up. So I've always been extremely driven. So the thought of being a loser, in reflection, that was sitting really that that was not sitting well with me at all. Combined with the pressure of financial, so I'd missed 5 mortgage payments on the house. That that was one of the things that I had to show for my winnings of being on TV. So there was a lot of stuff going on, but it was mainly the self worth was so low, and it was and a lot of it was just feeling like an absolute loser. I thought my thought process was like, how the hell did you manage to like single handedly churn so much success for yourself? You got on TV, you won it, you made a load of money, and now you're actually at the point where you've lost everything, and like you're a loser. You're in your late 20s and you've got nothing going for you. Like, and so that was the thought process, to be perfectly honest.
So was there a moment when you realised that something had to change? Was there a kind of defining moment or a kind of pivot point?
I'm very, very lucky that I was very bad academically at school, but I would consider myself having huge emotional and social intelligence. And there was something in my head that was, and I use this in my slide, and it's probably my favorite slide because it was the biggest ingredient that got me into a better place. And the slide says, take action, change things up. And I remember there was one particular night where I'd been out and I'd been I got in the house and I was just like, obviously just thinking what the hell's going on here, and I was like, I need to think, I'm gonna have to change here. I'm going to have to change. Gonna I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to change things up. I'm gonna have to get that job. And that was the big thing for me. And I'll be honest, it was I would say I had a bit of stroke of luck. I did get a brand thrown to me, and so it was a bit of luck. So I was training to get into the hair industry before Big Brother, and it was for a big company called Saks, who had multiple salons dotted around the country, and one of the directors, a guy called Richard, he reached out to me, and I hadn't spoken to him for years, and he basically said, "Listen, I'm setting this new barber, this new barber brand. Would you ever consider getting back into the hair industry? It's in Darlington, and that was my branch." And I was like, you know what? Because I knew I needed to cut these acquaintances out of my life, and I knew I needed to get away from them because they were a lot younger. They, like, I needed to get away from them, and I thought, yeah, this is, I'm going to do it. This was me. This was my opportunity, and you know what? That move did turn out to be probably the best move I ever made, because I moved to Darlington. I live here now. I met my now wife in that salon. I've done her hair, and we've got two lovely boys. We've got a girl on the way, and once I made that move, I can honestly say, like, I was pretty much immediately better. So in terms of in terms of like mental health, I would say mine was very circumstantial. Mine was very circumstantial, because once I made that change and that move, I was like, and I'll never forget the first day at work. And this might sound a little bit dramatic, but this is honestly what happened. It was raining, and I'd got this. I was house sharing, and I was walking to work, and it was raining, and I was looking up at the sky, and I was quite nervous about this first job. Again, I was just, paranoia, negative thoughts, but I always remember thinking, like, I am so pleased to be alive here, and like, I knew I was like literally starting from scratch. I knew I was house sharing in this rough. It was quite a rough street, but and I was house sharing with this couple. It's all I could afford, but like, I knew I was making the right moves, and I'll never forget those moments. And if there's one message that I can say, if anyone of the views is watching, if there's something that's really getting you down or really affecting you negatively, change it up, take action, because if you don't change, nothing will change. And I just think having that fresh start, and you know what, like most things, that first job, it was absolutely brilliant. The first day wasn't even bad, and that's another thing. The reality of things are pretty much never as bad as what we build up in our head. So I hope that's answered your question. I went on a bit of a
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you're now cutting hair. You're enjoying life. You've embraced your new life. So talking about your what you're doing now, which is really focusing on men's mental health. How did cutting hair, and I guess talking to your clients, did it open your eyes to the scale of men's mental health struggles?
Yeah. It fascinated me, to be honest. I hope that doesn't. I started. I was getting blown away by the conversations that I was having in the chair, and because I'd been in, a similar place, or I'd been in a place where I've had to show resilience. There was a massive, huge amount of me that wanted to help. I felt like I could help, um, and I felt as if I could give advice, and I really found the, the barber, me being a barber, I was like, wow, this profession totally is me. I am all over this. This is just, I feel like this is my job. I loved it. But there was just many stories where I remember one guy had sent me this huge long text message, and he was like, listen, you don't realize what you've done for me when I sit in your chair. Like you've helped me so much. There was one gentleman who came to me. He sent me a letter. He came in and gave me a letter, and I opened it up, and what this gentleman shared with me, what he'd got from that, that 45 minutes in the chair, blew me away. And then there was a guy who, he was a young lad, really good looking lad, confident. He actually worked for me as well. Um, he turned up at mine and my wife's door early hours of a Sunday morning, and he was having active suicidal thoughts. He'd googled how to do it, and me wife, we let him stay at our house for a number of nights. He was very close to my wife as well, because we had a business together, me and my wife, and we got him help. So there was a number of times where I thought, wow, this chair is like, I'm an unofficial therapist. I'm having loads of unofficial therapy sessions, and it blew me away.
Did you find that men were confiding in you things that they'd never told anyone? Did you find it like a safe space that was the first time they'd been able to do this?
Yeah, so completely. So what? One, I think my personality really lends itself to that. Number two, the barber chair setting very much lends itself to that. And then also the setting that I had. So I primarily worked by myself, and my business at the time was it was a barbershop and a bar. So but it was majority bar, and through the back was this little cool, very secluded barbershop. But but the door was closed. So I used to call it the confession room, because I said I should be in priest attire here, because the stories that I'm getting told are, honestly, I could honestly write a book purely on barber chair stories. And I think it makes sense, doesn't it? Like I even do it. And that's why I think having external speakers to companies actually has huge value, because telling people outside of your bubble actually sometimes is the best thing. And sometimes I'll do that. I will share something to the person in my chair that actually I might not even tell my friends, because it's that unique, like it's that stranger. And again, I think, obviously it's proven that side by side, it nudges conversations more. And I just think that behind the chair really lends itself to conversations.
And why, this may sound an obvious question, but why aren't men talking more? Why aren't they sharing how they feel, especially when they're struggling?
Well, I mean, the answer to that, there's definitely not a silver bullet to that question there. I think there's multiple reasons. I think, for example, you've got the Northeast and the Northwest. They're the worst regions in the UK for suicide. You've got construction; that's the worst profession in the UK for suicide. So if you take a look at that culture of around token weakness, vulnerability, we've got we've got a massive trait in taking the piss out of each other, taking the mick out of each other. So we generally don't like to show any form of weakness, and I think I come from a very much a sporting background, so if I use me experience of being in a football team, you know, you aren't showing any weakness, because the second that they've got opportunities, you're getting missiles thrown at you and a lot of it's love. Don't get me wrong, but and also we are a different animal to women. We are a different animal to women. So just asking us to talk doesn't work from my experience. That's why I'm a big advocate for we have to tailor mental health to men. And how do we do that? Well, I think we have to try and create safe spaces and almost make mental health in disguise. And that's what I say with that's why my and I'm not just saying this because this is my idea or my initiative and what I do, but how do we get blokes talking? Well, especially in the workplace. So my top three would be has to come from the top, has to come from the leaders, and because if it doesn't come from them and they're not into it, it will never ever snowball. Storytelling, I think, and again, I'm guessing this is why you do this podcast. Storytelling will always be the best way to connect. It will always be the best way to relate. And when you get those things, when you get someone, and again, someone who's storytelling and showing vulnerability, and then it's like, oh, flipping hell, like I've felt like that. I've been there as well, and that triggers conversations. Then combined with, and this is why I think the barber chair is gold dust. So I storytell, share my story, showing vulnerability. Then straight after, I've got that safe space and the conversations in disguise because you're just coming for a haircut. But after they've heard that talk and then they've got that perfect setting of the haircut, it just nudges them conversations. And yeah, so has to come from the top, showing vulnerability, storytelling, and creating safe spaces or communities. That's what I would say.
Well, I mean, you're right. The storytelling is exactly what this podcast is all about. And I've spoken to many men and many organisations actually that help men. And this idea, exactly as you're saying, that if you invite men to come and talk about their mental health, they won't come. But if you say, come and do something else, whether it's go boxing or go for a walk or have a haircut, then that's a safe environment to then have those conversations. So tell us about Never Throwing the Towel then. What inspired it? How did that come about?
I always say this is, so I've lived a very colourful life, and have many, many stories. The story which led me to this project, I would say without doubt, is my best story because it really has a feeling of fate. And I would say I'm 43 now, and I definitely have become more spiritual the older I've got. So the project that I've set up is called Never Throwing the Towel, with the strapline "Keep on Living," and those were the words that I used right at the end of my grandma's eulogy. So my grandma, very, very special lady. She brought me up. Very fun fact. She when I won Big Brother back in 2005 to win the show, it was down to public vote. My grandma racked up a £4,000 phone bill inside a week, just to get me to help me win the show. So she was my dinner lady at school. Very, very religious woman. To the point where she rubbed holy water on my forehead. Every single day I seen that woman. Before I left, she would rub holy water on my forehead, and I would give her a kiss goodbye. So I had an incredible relationship with her. When she passed away, I held her hand on her very last breath. And when conversations came about who's going to do our eulogy, I said to all the family, I said, let me do our eulogy. And I took this eulogy mega serious. And I literally locked myself away. And when I came to the end of the eulogy, obviously it was very upsetting. And I told myself, her story isn't ending on a negative. Her story's going to end on a positive. And right at the end of the eulogy, I used the words, she never threw in the towel, and she'd done everything she possibly could to keep on living. And that was describing her fighting spirit towards getting stage 4 cancer. Anyway, straight after the funeral, there was a gentleman who I'd never met before. He was waiting for me outside of the church, and this gentleman was in floods of tears. And he grabbed my hand, shook my hand, and he said, "Thank you so much for that eulogy." He said, "Your grandma was an absolute amazing woman." And the very same night, I was at my grandma's house, and I got a message, and the message was from the same gentleman who was waiting for me outside the church. And he sent me this huge long message sharing with me that he was in a very dark headspace. He told me that he was seeing professional help, and he right at the end, though, he said, "I just need to let you know that I'm clinging on to the words, never throw in the towel." And that, that really, it just grabbed me. It just absolutely grabbed me. And we talk about storytelling. That there showed me the power and the importance of a story, because that day I helped a man in attendance unintentionally. My aim was just to give my grandma the best send off she possibly could have. But in turn, he clung on to some words. And so then that basically, after my big other experience, then after my role as a barber, that moment there was like the final nudge, because I was already flirting with getting into that field. I felt that I really was passionate about it, but that there was like there was like this fire that got lit. And then I literally was like Googling, how can I speak keynote speaking? How can I do it? And I was Googling it, researching on it. I'd messaged a couple of agents, like speaking agents, and then like a bit of a stroke of luck. There was a woman who I'd done pantomime with. She'd got in touch with me, and she said she was holding an event. Would I be on the panel? And I said, okay. I said, what's it about? And she says, oh, it's a well-being event, and it's mainly a guest speaking event. And I said, can I be a speaker? And then she was like, oh, right, what about? And I said, listen, I've got a story. I says, I want to share it. Anyway, she said, let me have a look, because I kind of haven't planned anyway. She called me and she said, right, I'm gonna book you as a speaker. What's your talk called? And I'll never forget, like I had goosebumps, and I paused for a second, and I said, the talk's called Never Throw in the Towel. And that was the first time that I'd publicly shared, and I'll be honest, especially on the day of, I thought, what am I doing here? Like, nerves, fear, and anyway, I shared the story, and then couldn't believe the impact. Could not believe the impact. I was just getting multiple messages of people who'd attended the talk, and this was so timely, because November just approached. That November was approaching, so then I was like, I'm going to do the Never Throw in the Towel project. I'm going to call it project. Sounds good. So the project consisted of two things. First thing was free haircuts. So I've done a post on social media. I said, barber chairs, one of the best places for men to talk. Right through November, to promote Movember, I'm doing free haircuts. If anyone wants to come and have a chat, just drop me a message. Second thing was the free man's meetup in nature. And I basically just tailored the day around everything that I love to do. So we met up in a forest. We done a walk and talk. We done. I took a boxing session. We went over some breath work, and then we had a cold water dip. And we, it was just, again, I wasn't even sure whether that was a good idea. But then afterwards, just there was 7 men attended, and all 7 guys were like, Anthony, that was, it was class. That was amazing. You should do that again. So I decided to do a second one. Second one had 31 men attend, and I was just like, wow, like what a leap. Third one had 72 men attend. Like, I was like, wow, like, ITV and Time T's News were covering it. And then at this point, there was a director wanted to do a documentary on it, and then I went on LinkedIn, and then again I had the idea of thinking, well, if I story tell and then cut hair afterwards, I'm thinking that might work. And so I basically pitched that idea to a client who was owner of a factory who had like 70 blocks. Again, had no clue whether that was a good idea, but thought it might be. Done that, and then again, could not believe the impact. Couldn't believe it. And couldn't believe the amount of blokes that had shit opened up. Like, really opened up. I think there was 3 blokes that day who'd actually attempted to take their own life. And then that was like, this, like, this needs to, and this is like even bigger problem than I thought. And then it's just grew and grew and grew, really.
Obviously, you've created more of a movement now than just a project. I mean, this is huge. What impact has it had on you? If you look back to where you were, to where you are now, and what you've achieved?
So for me, and I do get asked that question. So one thing that I've discovered, being 43, if you can do something where you are actually making some form of change and impact, it's one of the best things that you can do in life from my own personal experience. So I personally, there's a few things. One, I feel like it's a calling. This project has a feeling of fate to me. Whether people think that's fluffy or not, that's how it feels to me. And I feel very privileged to be able to do the work that I do. I'm fully aware that it can be hard sometimes. With secondary trauma and stuff, I get told a lot of stuff. But then on the flip side, I've got an extremely strong mindset, and I'm fully aware if I ever do need to offload myself and look after myself, I will do that. So what has it done for me? I absolutely love it.
And is it if people want to get involved or come along, do they go to the website? How do they find out more? And are you just in the north of England, northeast?
Yeah, so I'm in the northeast at the moment. So it's Never Thrown the Towel project on all forms of social media platforms. My website, that is literally about I got one done and it wasn't very good. It was like a DIY one. I've got like a one that's top drawer now. That's literally about to get finished. So I'm in terms of the best way to get in touch with me, probably in terms of on social media platforms, probably LinkedIn, which is Anthony Hutton, on LinkedIn. I'm very active on that. At the moment, I just hold the monthly free retreat in the Northeast. I am about to set up a KIC, a CIC, which will enable me to get funding, which will then continue the mission, where I'm hoping to get ambassadors where I can get men taking the monthly free retreats under the never throw in the towel kick model, and that's the aim. And then I've got another aim as well, where I'm hoping to I'm doing 3 schools as well. And one of the things that I've got in place as well, I'll just have a quick pitch. Every single organisation that books me, tying in with my fee, I get them to sponsor a secondary school of their choice, where I do all the schools I'm doing are all free, that I'm doing. So yeah.
So if you could sit down with your 23-year-old self who just won Big Brother, what would you tell him?
You know what I would say? I would just say the only advice I probably would have give would been around the finance, would have been about the money. If my, I'm a dad to 2 boys. If they'd kind of done that, I would have said, look, right, we need to be business-like about the money. It would have just been about the knowledge and the money around the finance side of things. However, I don't think I would change anything. I don't think I would change anything, because for me, it's part of the journey. For me, all the losses are blessings, and everything's shaped the man I am today. So, although I would give advice, I wouldn't change anything.
And I love the fact that you've talked about fate actually the whole way through this discussion. At various points in your life, the right thing seems to have happened at the right time. Finally, then, what's one message? If you've got men listening to this who are struggling, what's one message you'd like somebody listening to this to take away, from your story?
What I would say, it would just be probably from a mindset perspective, really. One of the final quotes that I finish on when I speak is a quote by Napoleon Hill, and the quote is, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Now, we can all relate to that, because we will all fail. We will all have adversity. We will all have heartache. But having the mindset and knowing somewhere there's a seed of benefit. Now, I always kind of so now I live my life where if there's something bad that's happened, literally the mindset switch in my head is, where's the benefit? Where is the benefit? Where's the benefit here? And also just understanding something that I touched on of the law of polarity. So, in life, there will be bad times. There's also good times coming. There's dark. Guess what? There's light, and nothing lasts forever. That is including the bad times. If you just keep on going, and if you implement the correct things, the right things, sooner, slowly but surely, the good times and good things will happen. It's just, the quote I use is, suicide, permanent solution to a temporary situation or feeling. And I just think a lot of the time it's marginal, isn't it? Where you just think, if you just maybe just done that. I must say, I don't think everyone can be helped, but I do think a lot of people can be helped, and it's I've heard so many with the work that I do. I've heard so many stories. Some of them pure and utter luck. Like there's one guy who attended my retreats. He'd went to take his own life. He was in a bad headspace, and he put his phone down, and he went to go and do the act. And just when he was about to do it, his phone pinged, and the screensaver was him and his daughter. And he stopped, and he got down, and he went home. And it was luck. But now he's in a great place. He started actively doing. He got involved with the community. So the bad time. So the main, to answer your question, and I've went on a bit of a rant there. The bad times don't last. Good times will come again. It's literally the law of life. It's a law of polarity. Good times will come again.
I think that's a great place to finish. Anthony, thank you so much for sharing your experience today and talking about what you're doing. We need more people like you. And it sounds like your project, your organisation is just going from strength to strength. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. I always say yes to doing a podcast on this topic. I always do. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. If you want to find out more about Anthony and the Never Throw in the Towel project, visit the very soon to be updated website, neverthrowinthetowel.website, or you can contact Anthony directly via LinkedIn. So it's Anthony Hutton, where Anthony with an H. To raise the profile of the podcast, it really helps if you can review the show and please share it with your networks. If you have a story to share, then do contact me through the website mid-lifemen.com. And finally, there's now a book called Men Speak Up, Journeys Through Mental Health, which is based on some of the stories from the podcast and available on Amazon and on other online retailers.